record. And yes, Justin, over to you.
Thank you, Vincent. Certainly not seasoned or old, but not very seasoned. So Vincent actually approached me and said, anything you feel like sharing. And I said, the most interesting thing I've kind of recently been interested in is sociocracy. And the background to this is also beyond social services, is on kind of a transformational journey to try to see if they can operate as a sociocracy there as well. And so a lot of the materials I've kind of adopted from them, and they actually did a film screening. So what I will share about today is, what is sociocracy? Can AGS consider adopting it? And should we start with a film screening? So my slides were very, very terrible. And then Vincent said, hey, can insert some graphics and all. And he found this, and I thought actually it's quite good. So sociocracy is a peer-based governance system based on consent, to put it simply. So instead of departments, you have there circles. And I think what I like about circles is that it's a small unit as a small group as the unit of transformation, because you can work with, big circles like this, it takes a long time and people got to time keep and all that. But, 4 to 8 people, you can always come together and you can take your time figuring things out. So circles, and then the connections between circles is not
Justin,
top down.
sorry to interrupt. Are you sharing your slides by any chance?
Oh, you can't see it, is it?
Yeah, you can't.
Wait,
There you go. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so now I can see. I'm so sorry. So circles, and then there are links between the circles, not in terms of somebody in a hierarchical position indicating who's running which departments. The links are double links. So, there's like AGS, there's a community of management, and then you appoint the people to take part of certain functions. But those circles then vote in a representative. So then that representative will then participate in the upper circle. So that's kind of interesting. But the third most interesting part is that decisions are made by consent and not by majority voting and not by consensus. It's kind of like a sweet spot in between, and I'll explain what that is. So to me, it's a kind of decentralized organization through meaningfully autonomous circles. And the decisions are made through consent, and so circles can take action within the specified domains as a group without needing permission from a higher authority. And so I think plausibly, because many of us do change making initiatives, and everything hinges upon you to do it, and you want to find volunteers or people who can't participate, it's really hard if everything depends on one or a few people to do. So I start with consent because this is the most interesting part of it. Is at the heart of sociocracy is that it is not consensus, because the objective is not to seek to find a position that suits everyone's preferences. It is also not majority voting, whereby minority views lose out. So consent really just means having no objections. I can live with that, even if it is not your preference. So I'll kind of relate how a schools do this in the Netherlands, right? So, for example, the kids would come in and they say, "I want to buy. We think we should spend the money to buy a machine that makes, what do you call it? Candy floss, right?" And then many kids want it, so they can propose a motion for the school to buy it, and then they'll have rounds and people go around saying, I don't think that's important, right? I don't think that's useful. So the first thing is the proposal of motion. It's written down and there's time to present it. And then the second round is the clarification round, right? So is the proposal clear? What are you asking? And there's no opinion shared then. Then after that is the opinion round. What do people think about it? Is this healthy? Is this a good use of money, etc.? And then after that, you go to the consent round. The consent round means you give consent, means you can live with that. So you will go around, every single one in the room will get a chance to say this. And if you get somebody who says, "I do not consent," then and you explain the reasons why. So somebody will say, it's unhealthy, it's not a good use of money. And then it goes back to the proposer to say, okay, we've heard these objections. We can see if we can revise and integrate these objections to see if consent can be achieved. And so somebody said, this is not, this is so expensive, the machine, not good use of money. So then the proposer says, it's okay, then we'll make sure that we charge kids. Okay, no, the first one was about health. It's not healthy. So the 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 revised proposal was, let's limit it to 1 candy floss per kid. Then okay, then after that go back again. Then the person say, I still kind of feel uncomfortable with it because the money can be better spent for something else. And then the revision was, okay, then let's have the kids pay for the candy floss so that the amount of the money paid using is returned to the school, right? And then the person goes to the person is like clearly not their preference, but having heard everyone's energy and excitement about the candy floss initiative, I can consent to that, right? So and then it was passed and everyone celebrated. So that's for example of what the kids do, right? But I suppose um, uh, a larger company can do that too, but it seems that adults might find a lot of unlearning to do for these kind of things. But one thing that the people who do this find is that if you don't share the same view, you don't have to worry or fight to get heard, because through this, the minority view always gets a chance to hear, and also the minority view gets to hear what the community wants. So it's kind of useful in that sense. Plus, um, it reduces the facilitators who want to do this well even hold the space for, you may not have a very articulate reason for why not, but you feel uncomfortable. So the facilitators try to bring that out. This is just a lot of words, but basically, the circle design is a parent circle, like the community of management here can form sub-circles of which you have, right? So there's a community, there's an engaged membership experience circle which Daniel forms, but that circle can then choose its own representative, somebody who votes there, votes their own representative, and that representative gets to sit in the community of management to make sure that the ground up views from that circle gets passed back up to the central circle. So it doesn't mean there's no accountability or hierarchy. There is a sense of vision and direction from the central circle, but this double link ensures that feedback goes both ways now. So I won't belabor the point, but this is an example of I think a bakery that has is it bakery or cafe? Yeah, it's and then you have different circles make their own decisions. If you're if you're in charge of pastry, that sub-circle decides what you want to make. You don't have to go back to the central general circle to decide on that. So to me, it's a very elegant kind of social design because the small group is really a good unit for working together, organizing and taking action. And because you know one another, trust and work well with them, exactly because they're not too many to understand and work with. And yet the small groups do have representatives that sit in the parent circles and who can represent their views. So cooperatives are, I think, prime for sociocratic practice because it already has in its design and intention to be democratic. But one person, one vote is there's still politics or power or influence. If you design a cooperative can be democratic in that way, but not necessarily in its design, in its intention. I've also seen how conflict resolution is done in the film that I'm proposing to watch, and that uses sociocracy, which was very powerful. And I understand that there have been some conflicts here as well, so might be interesting to consider that as well. And I suppose if some kind of sociocratic design was in place, we don't really need to worry that much about who happens to be the leadership or the membership. The rules are well designed and defined collectively, and the rules will win the day. So this is the film that I've watched, and I actually watched it thanks to Beyond. So they invited everyone to the projector to watch it, and it was kind of interesting because Gerard, the executive director of Beyond, said, when I watched it at home, I fell asleep. But then there's something about watching in a dark room with others, and it's not just strangers, but there are people who you find kind of believe in a similar thing. So you watch in a dark room together with others in silence. It's almost like a religious experience, like wow, this is great, and you're watching others who care about the same thing. But School Circles is it's about democratic schools in Holland, but that also use sociocracy. So the two things that was interesting here is that you do learn about democratic schools, and these are really interesting because then we're so used to the MOE system where there's a curriculum and all that. These kids go to school, and maybe all that's required is that you hit how many hours a week, and then they go and do whatever it is they want. They learn whatever it is they want. So if you're interested in chemistry, then you book the chemistry teacher, say, I want to do this. If you don't want to, that's fine. And so that seems quite radical and dangerous. But if you watch this, you kind of feel that these guys have some things, they're doing something right. But besides that, it demonstrates how these schools use sociocracy for decision making. And so I think it's maybe like an easy way to kind of get an appreciation of the concept. And so these are some resources, but I guess it's kind of
Sorry,
unclear.
Justin.
Okay.
There is question for you in the chat.
Oh, okay,
Mary,
sure.
we're going to end the slide soon so that you can answer the question in the chat.
Okay. Let's see, what's the question in the slide? Yes, holacracy. I think it is a derivative. I actually got familiar with holacracy before sociocracy, but the sociocracy model was invented by some Dutch engineer, and so it has that kind of lineage and tradition. But very similar, very similar. And actually, so that's it, I mean, I think the offer here is if we watch a film, we could organize it not just for AGS members, but you should pay to watch this film, and then we should open it up to the public, and then the proceeds we get, all the money goes into AGS, right? And so it'd be a nice fun outing, and we even had beer and like chips there. So that's I'll open it up to questions if anyone.
Sounds like a plan, Justin.
Yes.
I'll get there. I have any questions on the floor before we move on? Maybe 1 more minute or 2 more minutes.
I'm just curious for Justin's view, for something like this to work, what is the fundamental skill that the people need to have? Because the population in Netherlands and the population in Singapore, they are very different, right? So in your view, listening to what happened there and what you see here, what is the most important skill that we need to acquire so that we can adopt something like this?
I think our sensibilities are all there. We all hope to be democratic. We just don't have a design that allows us to be, properly participating in a way that, we kind of consent to the agenda and consent to the things that people are suggesting. And so it's just basically democracy in action, right? I don't think there's anything special about the Dutch. It's just that if they found this and it works, and it seems that the kids take it on much easier because the rest of us adults are so used to having somebody convene and present an agenda, and you just kind of go to see whether you're interested in the agenda. If it's a volunteer group, if it's an organization, then you're just kind of instructed to be aligned to that direction. But I think we will take to it once we experience it, I feel. Yeah.
Justin, I will be very interested on following up on that because I've experienced a bit of that in some of the sessions that I run with the kids. That happens, exactly how to agree with consent and something that is fun and good for everybody, and how to help them consent and for them to voice out why they didn't like it and then to address it. So I've been seeing it in action with small kids, right? But I also am experiencing it at home because my son is very reactive when I try to impose something. So I need to get his consent first and help him voice out everything. So I think I see the potential of helping a lot of students. Because my son is demotivated in the class because the teacher is not giving him consent in a sense. And I see the reaction. So yeah, I would like to follow up with you on that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think even if AGS doesn't take this on seriously, I think as a facilitation tool, because many of you build communities, is that if you apply maybe the principle of rounds and consent, it actually just changes the whole kind of conversation in a way that you don't have to fight very hard or feel that you are too shy, or sometimes you don't have to fight very hard to keep the person who's the very loud voice in the room, because the process itself sorts that out. Yeah. Cool. Guild is experimenting. I think, yeah, let's do it. If we should get everyone's consent to do it, I suppose, at some point.
Can I just share a really quick, very practical way to do that? But Justin, what he's saying, I use a traffic light system all the time. So any ideas on the table, we go around the room and people say green, yellow, red. If it's green, it means they agree. If it's red, they're violently against it. They against it, and yellow is okay. You get everyone's voice in the system, go back and hear. Usually there's not many reds, but a lot of yellows, and then the yellows tune up the idea and we go around and do it again. So it's really lovely, right? You don't have to change your whole structure, but that's a simple step in that direction. And it's a really nice way to get everyone feel like they own the idea and tune it up rather than just, as you say, yes or no, right?
Right. That's wonderful.
Or
But,
assume that silence is consent.
but now it's not yet in place, right? So we have to defer to Vincent or Ash. So if somebody were to propose doing something like this, what should the process be, right?
Yeah.
As a secretary, I hear you. I will put it onto our AGM meeting soon. Okay, so we are on time. So I'm going to pass it on to the next segment that we have. So can you give Justin a round of applause? Yay! Thank you. So back to Vincent.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. And Justin, for the sharing. I think sociocracy personally for me is so interesting. I think Ash is saying this in the comments as well, right? The potential for human societies, I think it's massive. So let's find a way to kind of get that happening. So I'll stop the recording.